Good afternoon, Chairman. Thank you for taking me out tonight. We'll try and be brief. For the record, my name again is Sonia Chengiz. I represent the 2nd Suffolk District, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate 1199, an act regarding prevention of illegal trafficking and gun violence in the Commonwealth, as has been mentioned by some previous testifiers. This bill, as you know, seeks to crack down on the illegal gun supply chain. And I represent, as I mentioned, the 2nd Suffolk District, which is here in Boston, which contains some of the neighborhoods that are most directly afflicted by gun violence, and in particular, youth gun violence. And so this legislation, as you can imagine, is something that's of particular and very, very deep concern to my constituents. And I need to say, because often when we hear about the neighborhoods in my district in this building, it's in the context of talking about things like youth violence. And I want to make sure that you have a true picture in your mind of the neighborhoods that are looking to you for some measure of protection through this legislation. These are neighborhoods that are homes to thousands of wonderful kids who are doing the right thing, who are working against odds to do well in school, parents who are working hard to provide their families with positive role models for their children, educators who are relentless in their work to prepare our next generation of leadership here in this state. But even we see this, even though we have all of these wonderful actors doing truly positive things on a daily basis in my district, that job is made so much harder by the fact that the neighborhoods are still beset by very severe levels of violence, and violence that is made still more severe by the fact that young people have all too easy access to firearms in our neighborhoods. And we have the power in this legislature, and in particular on this committee, as the first step, to turn down the severity of that violence. And by no stretch of the imagination can this bill do that entirely on its own. It is one of a range of solutions that we need. Thankfully, in the legislature, we've recently passed $10 million in funding for youth violence prevention. That's a really important part of the solution. But this bill, too, is an important part of the solution to save a lot of lives through reducing that easy access to guns. Just to give you a sense of the scale, and this is only within my city of Boston, in 2010, 264 people were killed or wounded in Boston by a gun, which was a 17% increase over 2009. Murder by gunfire also went up even more, from 32 persons in 2009 to 60 people last year, an increase of over 50%. By limiting the amount of guns that can be legally purchased, as this bill would do, to 15 a year, it's one thing that we can do to turn down these levels, specifically by addressing the problem of straw purchasers who, as you know, buy guns in bulk on the legal market for resale on the illegal market. And I have to tell you, this is an idea that I have kicked around with, in particular, my grandfather, who is lives in Montana. He's a lifelong sportsman and hunter. And I've talked about it with many other folks, and I have, over the last few years, and I have yet to hear someone articulate an explanation that makes sense to me of why someone would need to be able to purchase more than 15 guns in a year, or you know, on average, a little more than one a month. And I understand that there's a desire to do so. I understand that. And to be totally frank and straightforward, I want to recognize this bill does ask for residents of the Commonwealth to take on some constraints in their personal liberty in being able to buy unlimited amounts of guns per month per year. We should be honest, it does do that. I think that is a reasonable, moderate thing to ask in the face of the problem that we see in some parts of the Commonwealth, and also in the face of the lack of a compelling reason why someone would need to buy guns in bulk in that way. The second main provision that I want to highlight is the tracking of the secondary gun market. This section requires that private gun sales or transfers of firearms from one individual to another take place, that they get registered with the state in the same way that a primary sale in a gun store would happen. And I think this speaks in some ways to the inconsistencies that one of the previous speakers mentioned in our gun laws, in that we treat currently primary sales differently than we do secondary sales. And I don't see a particular logic behind that, and this would help tighten up some of the loopholes in our gun laws and give our law enforcement agencies more tools to do better tracking when we do see those 45% of guns, or 30 to 40%, depending on where you're looking, of guns that turn out used in crimes that were coming from within our own state borders here in Massachusetts. Additionally, the bill closes the loophole in our gun laws, again, something that was mentioned earlier, by requiring gun owners to report a lost or a stolen weapon to the police within 24 hours after discovering that they are either lost or stolen. And this provision would solve that age-old excuse that currently is available for those who are transferring guns from the legal to illegal market, that the gun was stolen and they simply forgot to report it. So I would just ask, last provision, that the bill also requires the Secretary of Public Safety to study and make recommendations about the establishment of an interstate compact to combat illegal gun trafficking among states. So I would just ask that in crafting any final version of this bill for reporting out, and I hope you do report it out favorably, I ask you to simply hold at the front of your mind what you would do if it were your district in which a young child, a 2-year-old, was shot as his mother was trying to get him to safety, as happened just across the street from my district in the fall of 2010. Or hold in your mind if it were your district in which 37 or 38 people under the age of 25 were murdered in your district last year. How would you look at this legislation? What would be the sense of urgency that you would ascribe to it? And I would just ask you to hold that in your mind and remember that it is within our power to do something about these kinds of incidents before they reoccur, so that we can stop seeing the headlines of young people shooting each other and instead see the headlines of all the other wonderful things that are happening in neighborhoods like the ones that I represent, of all those young people who are working hard to get into college, who are doing the right thing for their communities, who are volunteering, who are creating great works of art, whatever it may be. So I thank you for hearing my testimony again today and for your consideration of this bill.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for the committee?